Good morning, everyone, and we welcome you today to the Dallaire Institute online symposium. We're just waiting for those of you who are joining us to jump in, so we'll give a few seconds for that to occur. Okay, I think we will start to get things underway. Again, good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for the second annual Knowledge for Prevention International Symposium, which you will also hear us reference as K4P. My name is Shelly Whitman, and I am the Executive Director of the Dallaire Institute for Children, Peace and Security, which is located at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. At the Dallaire Institute, our vision is a world where the recruitment and use of children as soldiers is unthinkable. I hope that each of you will accept my sincere gratitude for joining us here today. This symposium represents a key element of our K4P research project. And when we began the planning process for the second K4P symposium, we had originally thought we would be heading to Brussels and joining our colleagues from the Institute for Economics and Peace. However, given current global events and situation related to COVID-19, this was ultimately not possible. Yet, it cannot be understated that going online does provide a lot of exciting new opportunities, and in particular has allowed us the chance to expand the scope and size of this event. We have some amazing panelists for this event over the course of this week, and we are so grateful to be able to have people from all corners of the globe. So with all of that said, I want to thank you again for joining us here today and for making time for this important discussion in your already busy schedules. From our registration page, we can see that we have people tuning in from all across the world, from Vancouver to Lima, to New York, to London, to Mogadishu, and to Seoul, and to various parts of Africa that are joining us here today. This is truly a global audience. I also feel extremely fortunate today to be joined by so many valued partners, colleagues, and friends. And I welcome you and all of the new connections that will arise over the next 5 days that are truly exciting. In particular, I would also like to take this opportunity to recognize a very special friend to the Dallaire Institute, Bruce McKean. He is joining us today online and is our key donor for the K4P research project. We are immensely grateful for your ongoing support, Bruce, and we are so pleased to begin our third year of this exciting project. We would also like to recognize the Government of Canada and the Institute for Economics and Peace for supporting this event. The context of this idea of the K4P research project originated through a growing need to address the vast knowledge gap surrounding the indicators that underlie the recruitment and use of children as soldiers, and how this phenomenon is linked to escalations in violence and conflict that may culminate in mass atrocities and even at times genocide. The Dallaire Institute continues to advocate that by prioritizing the protection of children within the broader international peace and security agenda, we are ultimately creating conditions for lasting and sustainable peace. As such, the K4P project has a threefold vision. The first is to develop an early warning system for the recruitment and use of children as soldiers, something that currently does not exist globally. To incorporate child-centered indicators such as recruitment within broader early warning systems of conflict prevention, and to use the knowledge gained to improve prevention mechanisms to better protect children in conflict environments. It is this third tier of the project where our annual international symposium is critical to knowledge development, sharing, and dissemination. We hope that this year's symposium will provide an opportunity for further dialogue and critical reflection on the importance of early warning to the child protection field and also peace building globally. Needless to say, I believe it's going to be an exciting week, along with the incredible keynote speakers we have joining us today, who I will introduce to you shortly. And we have a fantastic lineup of online panels as well. Each day, we will draw the connections to the common thread of developing a children, peace, and security agenda for the world. Day one will focus on defining the children, peace, and security agenda. Day two, we will start to look at the connections between the women, peace, and security agenda and child protection. Day three, we will focus on the importance of recruitment prevention and how that's essential to building peace and security. And day four, we'll focus on how we can galvanize early warning to early action for recruitment prevention, child protection, and ultimately peace and security. I would like to emphasize that it's not too late to register for the rest of the symposium, so please visit our website to do so. We would be grateful to have your participation and also for you to promote it amongst your other colleagues, friends, family members. We thank those of you who have already signed up. I would also like to highlight that an exciting feature of this year's symposium is that each panel will include a youth advocate for peace. These are young and dynamic change makers from around the globe who will speak to the work that they are doing in their home communities, whether it's in countries such as Cameroon, South Sudan, Kenya, Northern Ireland, and Somalia. It is our hope that the discussions that will take place this week will not end here. As many of you may be aware, the Dallaire Institute has recently launched the K4P Community of Practice, which is a network of practitioners, policymakers, and academics in the fields of early warning, child protection, and recruitment prevention. The purpose of this network is to share knowledge, resources, and best practices on how to best support one another in our common mission to build a children, peace, and security agenda. If you are interested in learning more about our community of practice, we will send around a correspondence to all the attendees after the symposium with further details. And now, it's time for all of us to come together. If this past year has shown us anything, it is that we are all much stronger when we work together and prioritize our common humanity. 2020 has required us to think and act differently. The centrality of children to building peace and security globally requires a commitment to new approaches, new ways of seeing the world, new ways of thinking of the future. Let us make 2020 the year we alter the course of humanity for the betterment of children around the world. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us. And I would also like to take this moment to thank the incredible staff at the Dallaire Institute for making this all happen. At this time, I am pleased to introduce the Honorable Harjit Sajjan, Minister of National Defense from the Government of Canada, to provide opening remarks on behalf of the Government of Canada.
There we go. Just wanted to make sure we're up and running. Good morning from Ottawa, everyone. Bonjour. And thank you, Shelly, for the very kind introduction. And I also want to thank Dr. Whitman and the Dallaire Institute for the invitation to join today's opening session with General Delaire and Special Representative from Gamba. Thank you for sharing your perspectives on the critical issues of child soldiers. As Minister of National Defense, I'm proud of Canada's efforts on child protection. And 3 years ago, at the United Nations Peacekeeping Defense Ministerial in Vancouver, Canada, we made political commitments to prevent children from being recruited and used as soldiers in settings where United Nations peacekeeping operations are underway. We launched the Vancouver Principles on Peacekeeping and the Prevention of the Recruitment and Use of Child Soldiers alongside General Dallaire. In the 3 years since, we have accomplished a great deal together. And to date, through our advocacy, 96 countries have endorsed the principles, and we are encouraging more countries to join. Now, working with partners, last June, we released the implementation guidance for the Vancouver Principles. This is helping UN member states incorporate the principles in their own peacekeeping work. And last year, we established the Dallaire Center of Excellence for Peace and Security within the Canadian Armed Forces College in Toronto. The Center of Excellence is playing an essential role in ensuring that these principles become a key part of the Canadian Armed Forces doctrine and practice. Since that ministerial meeting, we remain committed to implementing the principles, and the Center of Excellence is just one of the ways we are leading on implementation. The Dallaire Institute, based in Halifax, is also doing exceptional work to advance the rights of all children affected by the horrors of war, particularly, of course, those recruited as child soldiers. Dr. Whitman and her team are leading through initiatives like the Knowledge for Prevention Project, which aims to identify the gaps that hamper our efforts. The COVID-19 pandemic has not made this work any easier this year, despite calls from the United Nations and others to cease fighting. Many countries around the world remain in discord. Girls and boys are still forced into hostilities, to take part in combat, to act as suicide bombers or sex slaves, or used as cooks, spies, and messengers. Child soldiers are victims. Their participation in armed struggle evidently brings with it serious implications for their physical and emotional well-being. We know that the consequences are devastating for them, for their families, and for the societies in which they are growing up. Without the right tools to prevent child recruitment, governments, child protection organizations, and policymakers are at a huge disadvantage. These prevention efforts are crucial to addressing the root causes of this serious issue. As General Dallaire wrote in they fight like soldiers, they die like children. Picking up the pieces of broken children after a conflict is hugely difficult. It's better to stop the recruitment and use of children within belligerent forces before it happens than to deal with the complexities of reintegrating children into their home communities. But when societies has broken down due to conflict and daily life is a struggle for survival, it is often the most vulnerable who are taken advantage of. Child soldiers go through what no human should ever have to endure. Many are exposed to horrific violence. They can be separated from their families, they miss out on education, and they can be excluded from their communities after the violence ends. And this is why the Vancouver Principles are so important, as the work of the Center of Excellence, the Dallaire Institute, the United Nations, and our numerous partners in civil society are doing every single day. And I'm proud of the progress we have made together to advance the principles over the last 3 years. But there is more work to be done to tackle this extremely complex problem. Through our foreign policy, Canada is committed to empowering those who are exploited and helping to make sure voices are heard. Now, this includes girls and boys at risk for recruitment. In and across Canada, we will keep doing everything possible to prevent their recruitment and use in war and work to support survivors. And that means finding ways to detect and prevent recruitment before it starts. We will continue to support a change through initiatives like the Elsi initiative for Women in Peace Operations to increase women's meaningful participation in peace operations. Women peacekeepers can communicate with children in conflict zones in different ways. They also offer valuable perspectives on the gender dynamics at play within recruitment and use of children in armed confrontations. And over the next few days, experts will be seeking more insight into what is working well in the field and what needs further study and follow-up. And to my fellow presenters and to all the delegates joining us virtually today, thank you for your interest, your energy, and your commitment to the eradication of this serious and tragic situation. I look forward to hearing more from your ideas on how we can tackle the significant challenges of child soldier prevention together, and finally to put an end to the most serious defense issue of our time once and for all. Merci beaucoup.
Many thanks, Honourable Minister Sajjan, for your opening remarks, and to the Government of Canada for your continued support. We look forward to continuing to work together to implement the Vancouver Principles across the globe. It is now my sincere pleasure to introduce you to the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflict, Virginia Gamba. Special Representative Gamba brings more than 30 years of experience and professional leadership on issues relative to disarmament, peace, and human security. From 2007 to 2011, she served as Deputy Director and Senior Coordinator on Safety and Security at the Ministry of Justice, Government of the Autonomous City of Buenos Aires. From 1996 to 2006, she was based in Africa, serving as inter alia as Peace and Security Consultant to the African Union, Deputy Director of the Institute for Security Studies in South Africa, and Director for South-South Interactions of Safer Africa. She was also the Senior Program Officer for Arms Control, Disarmament, and Demobilization at the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation in Chicago from 1991 to 1993. I would also like to express that Special Representative Gamba is also a wonderful friend and ally of the Dallaire Institute, and so we are extremely pleased to have her with us. SRSG Gamba, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Whitman. So, Shelly, General Dallaire, Minister Sajjan, and all our colleagues today, it is a pleasure to be able to address you today. My office has a long history of working with General Dallaire and his team to find ways in which we can collectively address and stop the phenomenon of the recruitment of child soldiers and the use and abuse of children for, in, and by armed conflict. The Roméo Dallaire Child Soldiers Initiative merits to be part of this prestigious event, this university, and my office looks forward to continue collaboration with the initiative itself. I must confess that when I received this invitation, I was not only honored to speak at the event, but also especially intrigued by its title, Knowledge for Prevention. Particularly since the linking of the notion of knowledge to that of prevention combines two areas of work that my office is now engaged in response to mandates received from the General Assembly as well as the Security Council in the last few years. With United Nations Security Council Resolution 2427 adopted in 2018, my office received a mandate to engage in prevention of violations, which is a task now added to our earlier mandates for identification, monitoring, and reporting of existing 6 grave violations against children in armed conflict. Similarly, in 2017, the General Assembly of the United Nations decided to prioritize 2 areas of work in the Children in Armed Conflict agenda, that of working with regional and sub-regional organizations in a proactive manner, and of engaging in the compilation and research into best practices and lessons learned emerging from almost 25 years of work. This decision exemplifies how much the General Assembly values knowledge as a basis for analysis and action. With this prevention mandate from the Council, supported by resolutions in the United Nations General Assembly on the value of acquiring and compiling knowledge, my office has effectively added a prevention and a knowledge focus to all of our work. Given the expectations on the delivery of our mandates, my office quickly restructured its personnel into 3 equal units of work: political, monitoring, reporting, and regional, and analysis and outreach. It is precisely the latter unit of analysis and outreach that embodies the power of knowledge in pursuit of better practice, not just to protect children from use and abuse by armed conflict, but in order to prevent the 6 grave violations against children from occurring in the first place. it has developed and matured several important knowledge-based activities, which I would really like to share with you. The first one was a 2-year project completed in February 2020 that produced a technical guidance note for mediators on ways in which children and armed conflict issues should be placed at the center of any negotiation, dialogue, or ceasefire generated between armed groups and governmental forces. This guidance assists any negotiator to include specific discussions of the do's and don'ts in respect of the use of children and suggests manners by which children can be separated and released with an aim to be reintegrated into society as part of the negotiating process. The guidance was presented by the Secretary General himself in the presence of the King and Queen of Belgium in the Security Council in an open session earlier this year. It is now being rolled out in the African Union, the European Union, and the United Nations system, and has received very encouraging reviews. Our plans are to continue to bring this tool to regional and national level attention over the next 2 years. Another 2-year initiative based on the acquisition of knowledge in order to produce better practical results for children on the ground is the Global Coalition for Reintegration of Trust. This initiative, co-chaired by UNICEF and my office, took a very simple question to new and higher level of discussion, to a specific research lens. So the question was, can the reintegration process for children recovered from conflict be undertaken in a more comprehensive and sustainable manner? For years, children separated or released from armed groups and forces have been surrendered to UNICEF-managed reintegration centers, which are fundamentally a recovery place, allowing children to be evaluated, assisted with psychosocial programs, and provided with a set of skills in order to earn a living not connected to violence. While this process is ongoing, the center also attempts to reconnect the child with his or her past through the tracing of the family and engaging the family to admit the child back in its home. Since this type of reintegration has always been considered part of emergency humanitarian processes, the offer of reintegration services has never lasted for long. Resources are committed normally for a 4 to 6 month period, but rarely more. The Global Coalition for Reintegration Initiative seeks to study ways to finance and develop long-term reintegration programs that can offer better services to the children and to their community for a period between 3 and perhaps up to 5 years. 3 research papers were agreed to and prepared, including an analysis of the actual status of reintegration programming, the need for integration to be robust so as to break the cycle of violence and join forces with peacekeeping and developmental plans, and innovative ways in which this longer and more comprehensive integration service could be financed. We are now publishing the research results and will soon develop an international academic advisory board to oversee a second phase to this project. A third activity the Analysis and Outreach Unit has developed is a new global public awareness campaign entitled the Act to Protect Children Affected by Conflict campaign, which seeks to educate on the 6 grave violations so that communities and practitioners can identify them as they occur and or prevent them from happening in the first place. Today, this campaign is developing new forms of outreach, mostly through radio programming at community level, as a direct result of the impact of COVID-19 and the difficulties in reaching children in conflict areas today. Lastly, the unit is busy commencing a comprehensive lessons learned exercise looking back over the past 15 years of Security Council mandated monitoring and reporting, as well as the best practices in the successful implementation of joint action plans between the United Nations and listed parties. I can confidently say today that the decision to engage in research, analysis, and outreach in the Children and Armed Conflict agenda in both its protection and prevention modes has been a game changer for our office, as well as for the country task forces on monitoring and reporting in the 21 situations of conflict we carry in our document. We truly believe that this knowledge generation leads to better preparation and ultimately better prevention of violations against children. To respond to more immediate calls by the Security Council for my office to undertake more prevention work, the office's unit on monitoring, reporting, and regional work has also developed a broader approach in working directly with parties to conflict that are listed in the Secretary General's annual report, as well as by exploring regional action programs and policies that might mitigate and ultimately prevent violations against children across borders. In the past, when a party was listed in the annexes of the Secretary General's report for a violation, a joint action plan or commitment would be developed between the United Nations and that party, whether it was a state party or a non-state actor, so as to address and prevent that one violation from happening. The successful completion of the action plan would lead to a delisting of that party over time. However, with the recent Resolution 2427, combined with the fact that almost no violation exists in isolation from the other 5 grave violations, my office works with the task forces on the ground to ensure that all 6 grave violations are incorporated in all action plans, whether the party is listed for all of them or just one. This method now serves as both a remedial action regarding the actual violation for which the party is listed, as well as a prevention action to ensure that the other 5 violations do not occur. The first such comprehensive action plan was signed between the United Nations and the government of South Sudan in February of this year, with the added bonus that our child protectors on the ground were also able to incorporate 2 non-state actors who were also listed for violations to join in the comprehensive action plan with the government and the United Nations. But we did not stop there. For the last 2 years, we have been holding a set of regional workshops, co-chaired with UNICEF in Asia, the Middle East, East Africa, and Western Central Africa, plus South America, which bring together the co-chairs of our task forces for all situations existing in one geographical region. Thus, we brought as an example the co-chairs of our task forces for Myanmar, Philippines, India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan for a 3-day meeting in Thailand. We further brought the heads of all United Nations regional offices for both Secretariat and funds and programs for a 1-day interaction with the co-chairs. For the first time, those responsible for monitoring and reporting to my office were able to also share with each other the similarities and differences that they encounter in the pursuit of their job on the ground. We have conducted 4 such regional workshops to date with great success, some of them having led to the cross-pollination of tools and tactics for successful negotiation between different cases. Ultimately, protection of children is better served when a comparative and proactive approach is taken by using all the tools at our disposal, not just to stop violations, but also to prevent them. I would like to pause here to make a generic reflection and give homage to one great idea, which really emerged due to the people present today in this virtual room. As the Secretary General of the United Nations often says, the key of the Children and Armed Conflict agenda of action to better protect children lies in the multitude of tools at its disposal to influence parties to conflict. There are three sets of tools that my office and our field child protectors use in the delivery of their tasks. First, the quarterly reports to the working group of the Security Council that ultimately lead to the annual report of the Secretary General and his decision in relation to listing parties in the annexes to the report. Second is the tool of signing and implementing joint action plans and commitments with parties listed as they engage in measures that can lead to their progressive delisting. And third, best practices that can assist all parties, particularly governmental ones, to avoid violations against children in the first place. Of these best practices, there are four which are of paramount importance as tools for action: the Paris Principles, the Safe Schools Declaration, the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the latest, the Vancouver Declaration and Principles. The latter was the missing link, bringing to bear the experience of General Dallaire in the training of troops assigned to engage in peacekeeping operations where the child center issue and violations against children is prevalent, the provision of capacity to armed and security forces, not just of peacekeeping troops, but also of affected states that seek to improve their capacity and accountability, is the one thing that can both impact prevention of violations and assist in the sustainability of these measures through the correct training of the forces that will have to deal with children on the ground. Like one would say in French, I say chapeau to General Dallaire and to the government of Canada for having filled this important gap in the best practices needed to better protect children and prevent their use and abuse during armed conflict. I don't want to take much more of your time, particularly when we must all learn from the next speaker, who talks the talk because he has walked the walk, something very few scholars can boast. Therefore, let me finish by pointing out that all the best practices and the best efforts to better protect children have one thing in common: they are useless in isolation of each other, achieving full potential only when seen as tools for collective engagement and action. Each initiative that has filled a gap in the protection and prevention universe affecting children in armed conflict has come from a different source: the United Nations Secretariat, the United Nations agencies, funds and programs, regional organizations such as the European Union or the African Union, international collective security organizations such as NATO, initiatives of member states such that of Canada through the Vancouver Declaration and Principles, and Norway, Argentina, and Spain in the development of the Safe Schools Declaration, and France via the Paris Principles. The good practice done by civil society and non-governmental organizations such as World Child, World Vision, and Save the Children, to name but a few, and the children themselves, as is the case of the UNICEF Canada Ambassador for Children affected by conflict, Maria Tukama, who is herself an amputee, victim of the barbarous cruelty of armed groups in Sierra Leone. They are all working together to ensure that these most vulnerable of children, those directly affected by armed conflict, can be spared, rescued, helped, recovered, and protected. It is our collective actions that will lead to the ultimate prevention of these violations. Canada has done its bit for this collective goal, more than its bit, because Canada has given us General Dallaire, who is himself the inspiration for our collective work. For this reason, I want to end this intervention with two simple words: thank you.
Thank you very much, SRSG Gamba, for your very thoughtful address. I want to stress that the Office of the SRSG has been a long supporter of the Dallaire Institute and our K4P research project. We are grateful to have them as part of our K4P advisory group, and we look forward to continuing to work together to ensure the protection of children is prioritized within discussions on peace and security. The Dallaire Institute is a key partner in assisting the SRSG's office to achieve their mandate. I am now pleased to introduce retired Lieutenant General Roméo Dallaire, founder of the Dallaire Institute for Children, Peace and Security. As many of you know, he is a celebrated advocate for human rights. General Dallaire is also a respected author, government and UN advisor, and former Canadian government senator. Throughout his distinguished military career, General Dallaire served most notably as the force commander of the United Nations Assistance Mission for Rwanda during the 1994 genocide. Whether as a military commander, humanitarian, senator, or author, General Dallaire has worked tirelessly to bring national and international attention to situations too often ignored, whether the prevention of mass atrocities or the struggles that he and many other military veterans face with respect to post-traumatic stress disorder, or the recruitment and use of children as weapons of war. I now ask you to join us for General Dallaire to take the floor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shelly, and thank you, my leader, in the efforts that we are so engaged in through the Dallaire Institute and your leadership in moving the yardstick significantly in the realm of prevention of the recruitment of child soldiers. I wish to welcome you also to my home here, not far from Quebec City, and happy to be able to do so under these circumstances. Minister Sajjan, thank you, sir, for being with us. Not only today, but having been with us since a considerable length of time, and for moving the Vancouver Principles. And now we're looking at you to continue that effort in getting Canada to continue to invest in helping countries operationalize the guidelines that were produced under your leadership. And we at the Dallaire Institute will continue to be a strong partner to you. To you, Madame Virginia Gamba, you are the strongest voice, the most eloquent voice, and the most determined voice in the protection of children around conflict. And you are so suited to continue this fight. And I am only honored to be able to be occasionally by your side to watch the reaction of people as they see the verve and the energy and the passion in your eyes as you yourself move the yardsticks at a much more complex plane, which is through the UN, of course, and all the member states. I'd like to begin by thanking the Dallaire Institute team and Dalhousie University for putting this important dialogue together, as well as the incredible support network and valued partners that we have created and are with us across the globe, and particularly the Institute for Economics and Peace, for their unwavering dedication of putting children's rights up front. Children's rights up front. The use of children as weapons of war should be unthinkable. Should be not even in the imagination of human beings. Yet it remains a far too frequent facet of conflict, and an element that seems to sustain conflict into generational wars. As many of you are aware, the ongoing abuse of these children by unscrupulous adults to conduct adult wars is something I have dedicated the rest of my life towards and attempting to end. Striving to create a world where children can be children without the threat of violence will assist for me and many others in closing a wound as we have, as Minister Sajjan has, as a veteran, we have faced and have suffered this deep injury that simply does not want to go away. The Dallaire Institute was established as a call of action, a platform, a resource to work with the security sector, global child protection advocates, and academics to progressively end the recruitment and use of children as soldiers. As a soldier and a peacekeeper, encountering children in combat presents one of the longest lasting scars, one that simply does not seem to heal. Wrestling with the haunted questions that persist long after these encounters are experienced devastate many of us for years and years and years. No child should ever be used to combat a war, and no soldier should ever be put in such a scenario of having ultimately the ethical dilemma of use of force or not. I have encountered children firsthand on the battlefield in some of the most horrific of scenarios possible. I have questioned my decisions, making a split-second decision, in fact, on whether to see them as a child that they are or as a risk to my soldiers and to myself, to the safety, to our ability to conduct our mission, as a moral dilemma that I have replayed in my mind for the last 26 years and simply does not seem to go away because the children are still being used. It's still out there. It is a moral dilemma that many others continue to face in conflicts all around the world. And that dilemma persists because adults continue to recruit children as instruments of war. Although progress has begun to understand post-traumatic stress disorder and moral injury, the connections encountering children recruited and used as soldiers remains a fundamentally understudied area of peace and security operations, and something I wish to speak of. This research gap is further acknowledged by, in fact, the Vancouver Principles, which Minister Sajjan assisted so much in moving so deliberately forward, which calls for a greater understanding of the long-term psychological effects of such encounters with children that may have on security sector actors. This long-term effect, this moral injury, simply does not disappear. Moral injury is defined as the perpetration, the failure to prevent, or the bearing witness to acts that deeply contradict one's moral compass and belief system on what is right. Moral injurious experiences lead to a deep-seated feeling of remorse, of guilt, of course, distress, of negative perceptions, and further mental health challenges such as PTSD, self-harm, depression, and yes, suicide. However, much of the research around moral injury of former peacekeepers remains anecdotal, with little to no focus on the connections with children. It exists, but that connection does not seem to have gained momentum. Yet, through our limited understanding of the causes and consequences of moral injury, we know that an encounter with child soldiers during military service can be considered as a moral injurious experience for which we cannot simply throw people in front of without preparing, without building the capacity to sustain this and to overcome it. This injury has the potential to negatively affect the morale of our troops, to jeopardize operational effectiveness, to actually put them even more at risk of not conducting the operations as they should to protect others. And ultimately, it adversely impacts the mental health of the security personnel and their families when they do come back with that injury. This is why the training of security sector actors is imperative. It's not needed. It's not a nice to have. It's essential. It's imperative. It's part of soldiering of this modern era. Not only to prevent the recruitment of the use of child soldiers from occurring in the first place, which is, of course, part of our efforts, but also to prioritize the health and long-term well-being of those men and women in uniform that we want to continue to see serving effectively and with experience to become even more effective in the field when faced with such dilemmas. These experiences and the effects of these horrible experiences of facing children in combat, in conflicts, they're passed down to the children of the soldiers, to the police officers when they return home, and the cycle of pain and the difficulty of resolving it impacts and injures them, and they themselves become a very affected and ultimately difficult childhood amongst our own. The need to protect children from all forms of violence, including recruitment and use, is a responsibility bestowed upon us all. It's part of adulthood. We all have a part to play in ensuring that humanity continues to progress forwards, not regress, even though we got it all on paper to solve it. How is it that it's still ongoing? How is it we sense at times something like the use of children as child soldiers is a regression? It's moving backwards. We have the power as individual citizens, as members of our respective communities, as global change makers. That's what you are, global change makers. That's why you're here, to overcome the unspeakable tragedies and shape the course of history for the better by preventing the sustainment of conflicts and ultimately mass atrocities that even lead to, yes, genocide that I saw being used by children to perpetrate the slaughter. The safety of our children and the basic respect for their human rights and dignities, it's essential to sustainable long-term peace. They're the aim of the exercise. That's what's going to sustain peace. The youth, the children. And children and youth are the cornerstone to the future international peace and security agenda. So let's write that agenda to include them as full partners and building it with them in mind by empowering them today and prioritizing the way we make decisions about peace and security that places the children as a priority, not as an afterthought, not as something that, oh, gee, we better consider. They're at the front lines. They are the ones who will live with it much longer than us. Why aren't they part of that process? Why aren't they participating fully to the shaping of the future, from the policies to the actions to the decisions taken by the elders? Once again, caught by time, and respecting what Shelly absolutely wishes me to hold to, I will have to end by thanking you, by each of you for tuning in from around the world, the globe, to join us online today. Never doubt the role that you play in the global peace building efforts and this target that we have set for ourselves in regards to stopping and preventing the use and abuse and destruction of children by turning them into weapons of war. This work requires all of us to pull together. We cannot have any winners in the future if humanity is regressing, if children are still the tools of adults to conduct war. Thank you sincerely for joining me at my home and joining around the world in this extraordinary symposium on K4P. We want to prevent it. Help us. Join us. Shelly, back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that very set of illuminating, passionate opening remarks, and of course for your ongoing leadership and your dedication to ensuring that children are protected from the devastating effects of violence and armed conflict. It is now my great pleasure to start the next portion of this event today, which really speaks to the heart of why we are all here. I want to introduce to you two incredible individuals. The first being Masai Ujiri, founder of the Giants of Africa and president of the Toronto Raptors Basketball Club, and Mira Allure, youth leader and alumni of the Giants of Africa, who is joining us today as well. We are sincerely grateful for the partnership between the Dallaire Institute and the Giants of Africa. Our shared vision looks at the importance of engaging and prioritizing young people in peace-building initiatives as part of the discussions that will shape their future. Masai and Mira, welcome. We are so delighted to have you both join us today. Masai is in his 7th season as the president of the Toronto Raptors Basketball Club, leading the team to the most successful period in franchise history, including, and all Canadians are exceptionally proud of this, the NBA championship in June of 2019. Masai became the first African-born general manager of an NBA team and was named NBA Executive of the Year in 2013. As a native of Nigeria, he brings tremendous knowledge and extensive global connections to the Raptors front office. He has played professionally in Europe with places such as Belgium, Germany, England, Greece, and Finland. He has also managed and coached the Nigerian junior and senior national teams. On a personal level, Masai has been tireless in his efforts to promote and develop the game of basketball throughout Africa. And he is the founder of the Giants of Africa Foundation, which urges young people to dream big and uses basketball to educate and enrich the lives of youth and create opportunities for them on and off the court. Since 2002, Masai has also served as the director of the NBA's Basketball Without Borders program. In addition, I would like to introduce to you Mira Allure, who is a youth leader and Giants of Africa alumni that strongly believes in supporting and empowering youth across Africa. She has adapted a role to facilitate and act as a voice for the forthcoming generation of change makers. Mira is currently studying in the UK and originally from Kenya. And we know that she dreams big and that one of her dreams is to one day be the president of Kenya. So today, what I would like to do is to take the opportunity to engage in a fireside chat with Masai and Mira. And so Masai, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to see you, and Mira, lovely to see you as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to begin this portion of the symposium by starting out with some questions to you first, Masai, and if we can begin, there are some questions I'd love to get to, but I want to just thank you immensely for being here, for taking time out of your day, for both of you for being here and taking time to be a part of this symposium. So Masai, one of the questions I wanted to start with is, first of all, is tell us a little bit about, why you're passionate in terms of your roots in Africa. You started this a charity called the Giants of Africa. Where did the idea of your charity Giants of Africa come from? If you can describe that a little bit.
Yes, first of all, Shelly, thank you to you. It's great to see General Delaire and hear him speak, and all the honorable speakers. I obviously followed the work of General Delaire for many years, and obviously his famous the famous movie, and I've done some work with him, and then the partnership with you guys has been really something that we take very, very seriously, because I think what you guys are doing is really incredible work. So thank you, and hello to everybody, and thank you for having us, Giants of Africa, and Myrah, one of our future leaders, as part of this symposium. How did the Giants of Africa start? It's a simple idea, Shelly, that I grew up playing basketball as a youth, and I got opportunity to come to the United States to go to school later on, my youth days when I was 18, 19. But growing up as a youth on the continent and in northern Nigeria, there were not very many opportunities for young sports players, basketball players, and you could tell the talent, you could tell the passion. And as I got more opportunity working in the NBA, starting to work in the NBA, and even the days when I played on the national team, it occurred to me that I needed to go back and give more kids the opportunity to learn basketball, the basic fundamentals of the game. So I selfishly went back in the beginning as a scout. So looking for players. When you become a scout, you just want to find the next great player, and who's the next Hakeem Olajuwon or Dikembe Mutombo. But then I started to realize that very few of them are going to make it into the NBA. What happens to the rest, and what are we doing? And that's how Giants of Africa started to come to my head, and founded this with a friend of mine, Godwin Owinje, and he focused a lot more on the talent side, and I started focusing a lot on maybe the sport, using sports as a tool in some way or the other, and then teaching more life skills, which we will get into later. But that's kind of how Giants of Africa started, going back, giving back to the youth, and I'm getting this opportunity in the NBA. And as I grow, how do you slowly start to maybe pass it on to the younger generation, to the younger youth of Africa and around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. The work that you're doing is amazing, because many people could achieve the kind of status and fame that you have also received. You speak very kindly about General Delaire, but we know certainly, Masai, that many young people here in North America are also looking up to you as well as a voice. And so when you think back to when you first began the Giants of Africa, what would you say would be some of the greatest challenges that you faced when you started the organization?
You know, it's the first one that we all face with organizations and foundations, which is funding, right? You try and squeeze every way. I remember when I first started the camps, I would put a bin in front of, in the locker room, in the middle of the locker room, and all the players, I was a scout with the Denver Nuggets at the time, and the players, Carmelo Anthony, Kenya Martin, all those guys, Marcus Camby, they would throw shoes in there into the bin, and it would fill up. And then we had to find the means to get them back to Nigeria, and then I'd ship all these shoes to all the different coaches that were flying with me back to Nigeria to conduct the camps. And you get to Nigeria and your prayers were like, I hope these shoes all get here and all the gear all get here. And you're in the airport trying to pick everybody up in Lagos. And then just the usual challenges of whether it's facilities on the continent where you have to make sure you book gyms, you have to make sure that the facilities are right. I've done camps where 2 days, 1 day before the camp, the facility or the court is nowhere close to what it should be, to be used for a camp. And this have always been huge challenges. As we grew, I did the camp for 10 years in Nigeria before moving to other countries around the continent. And you have the challenges of borders, the challenges of other cultures, people that I'm lucky. I was able to go to Kenya and my mom's country and start over there. And the one thing I know, even with all these challenges, Shelly, is there's something about sports that brings us all together, right? It brings a happiness in youth, but in people generally. And so those challenges, a lot of times have become joy, right? They become happiness, and there's fulfillment in what you try to do, what you try to give. And the last one I would say is it's so hard to do everything you want to do, right? If you want to do a basketball camp in Nigeria now, well, why aren't you doing one in Ghana? Why aren't you doing one in Morocco? And so choosing for us as an organization is very difficult. All those became challenges, but more like every other foundation, you try to fight it through and keep growing and keep helping because there is a cause.
Absolutely. And all of those challenges you describe are exactly the similar challenges that we would had in the beginning. And since this is our 10th year in existence, it's interesting to hear you put that perspective on it, whether it's facilities that we would get for training military and police, or those very points you've said about why this country, we get that all of the time, countries screaming at us, you should be here, you should be there. We'd love to be everywhere. But as you said, it's really difficult in the beginning, especially to get investment, and to maintain that now during a COVID era is another challenge. So I'm really grateful to hear you talk about that, Masai. And I guess the other thing that I wanted to, kind of draw back to, you spoke about the importance of basketball or sport as a way to bring people together. And we also believe with the Dallaire Institute that bringing people together for the benefit of children is also something that is a convening element. And I'm thinking of, in terms of you reflecting as a child growing up in Nigeria, how did your earliest years growing up shape your life? And maybe if there's an experience that you could talk about in terms of how that's impacted the way you think now.
Well, it's a great question, Shelly. It's what we talk about now, and the importance of values and what you learn as a kid growing up. I just remember all the things that my parents would teach me and tell me, and how they've come to use now, even not only as a person of society or community, but also with the blessings that, I say it humbly, being a leader, you have to use these things, I think, and if you've gone through them in an incredible way, just growing up in tough environment, but whether we had a piece of bread or it was going good for my parents and we were a middle-class family, or we were going through hard times, or there were times where there was political unrest or religious unrest in northern Nigeria, you learn perseverance. The human beings are very resilient in what they do, but my parents always taught me just the core values of life, so it's being honest all the time, you know who to trust, and the people you believe in, the close people that you believe in your character, as a person is really strong. And our culture, I grew up in a Muslim dominated area, but just friendships, people, treating people right, and also growing up in a church environment with my family. And you learn those really core values of respect, whether it's respecting women, whether it's respecting elders, whether it's respecting school. Those key values were always key for me. You know, I remember washing my dad's clothes every Saturday, you know, and I remember my dad, every month he would get a bag of rice and he would always bring back a bag of rice from work. And that was one of the bonuses they gave him, you know, like in his job. And he would always bring back half a bag, you know, and he divided the other half among all the workers in his job. And to me, it said something about who the man he was, you know, who the man he is. And the last thing I'll say, Shelly, is we mirror those people that we grow up around, right? You know, and it's what my mom used to call good company and bad company, you know. And when I remember the good company now, I remember the values of what we did. I just remember how strong my dad was. He'd wake up every morning and go for a walk at 4:30 in the morning, and I'd wonder, what's this crazy man doing, you know, like, and doing this. And now I wake up at that time of the morning every day, you know, like, and it's just something. And he would go for a walk and then come back and he would read, you know. And I do the same thing now. If you Canadians, or we Canadians, will allow us to do it in the winter, we would go for more walks. But unbelievable values, you know, like it shapes your character. And for me, it really started from home.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of connecting that to the work of the Giants of Africa, and your camps are centered around basketball. But, you know, I absolutely love the whole phrase that you use about dreaming big. And how can sport be used, you know, as a tool for peace building and relationship building across some of those social divisions? You talked about that, you know, understanding that from being a young child growing up in that kind of a context, but it's relevant, especially right now in the world. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy on that, about peace building and sport?
Well, with Giants of Africa, actually this came about from my relationship with an American coach called Oliver Johnson. We call him Coach OBJ. And if you guys go and see the Giants of Africa movie, he's in there, and he taught me basketball. He taught me how to be a man, and he taught me a lot of the things that I tried to learn growing up at home on the basketball court. And it was not only the skills of basketball. So later on in life, when OBJ started like building more after I left the country, he started, and there was a lot of instability in Nigeria. He started going to areas where he would build basketball courts in unstable areas, and he would call them peacekeeping zone, you know. And he called me, and he wanted to do this and travel everywhere. And he told me an incredible story of going to Port Harcourt, and where there was a lot of problems there with rebels and people kidnaps, and he went into that environment, and he walked in with a basketball, you know, and he starts dribbling the basketball, and these guys become so enamored by the game, and he builds a court there, and he noticed how it just took youth away from some of the things they learned to do on the streets, you know, like some of the things that you guys are working against, right? Is trying to get those kids to focus on more things. And that's what led me with Giants of Africa and us, you know, like to go to more of these areas where you can go and encourage through sports and teach them that you don't have to be a professional player. You can have so many things that you can do, and then teach them more life skills. And that has led us to Kankuma, to Dada, to Mogadishu, to Maiduguri, to Samburu, all these places, you know, like I'm so proud of being able to go there and starting some work there, and hopefully we can continue the growth. But it's so important that sports affects, you know, the social development of youth, especially on the continent of Africa, where opportunities are not that many. If we can take sports a little bit, you know, like to encourage them, I think this will create a lot of peace in a lot of these zones.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me that some of the NBA players that you've brought as well from Africa are also engaged with uplifting young people as well. And I know I've heard some of the stories from, you know, Serge Ibaka and thinking about Pascal Siakam and others. And it's inspiring to see that giving back being a key part of the Giants of Africa approaches as well. And so in light of that also, I'm thinking about, Masai, the incredible leadership you've also displayed in terms of ending systemic racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, and the leadership you've taken on that, and some of the challenges you have personally faced. Thinking through some of those dynamics across the globe, can you talk about where you see children and youth fitting into those broader discussions? And are we doing enough to engage and empower that generation of young people?
Well, we're not, you know, like that's the honest truth, you know, and this is where I come back to humanity, and where I think this is just such a strong and important part of our lives. You know, what I teach my son and what I teach my daughter is who they are going to become, you know. So we can talk as much as we want about systemic and finding more jobs for Black people and finding them in leadership positions and all of that. I believe, you know, we would do some work, and a lot of people are going to do plenty work to help with that. But for the next generation that you're talking about, we have to start now. For the generation of my 4-year-old son or my 6-year-old daughter, what are we teaching them at home? Yeah, what we're teaching them at home is love has no color. Okay, yeah, love has no color. We have to show passion for people and treat people equally. Yeah, and if you don't learn that from home, if you're being taught something different at home, you will carry that for a long time in your life, and then you will require change at some point, or you will carry on, you'll be encouraged by some people, and you'll be encouraged by an example is leadership. We see the leadership in some places. We see the leadership, particularly in the United States, that encourages lies, that encourages these kinds of things, you know. And so it's going to start at home. Yeah, we're going to start at home. I'm going back to the basics, just like we did with Giants of Africa, with basic fundamentals, with skills, with everything you do, with shaking a hand of a person and introducing yourself and saying, my name is Masai Ujiri, and looking at that person in the eye, and honesty and trust and all those respect, all those things, respect for women, all those things play a huge part of this. So with racism and where the world is going, I simply come down to humanity. Who are we as persons? Because I'll say this lastly, Shelly, when you look at George Floyd and the man kneeling down on him, on his neck with his hand in his pocket, I question who that guy is as a person, even before I question who he is as a police officer. 100%. I question who those three people are, three other policemen that that hit, that watched this happen. I'll take it back even to another race, you know, to another instance in Buffalo. All those soldiers that walked past that white old man, and he's bleeding from his head or wherever he was bleeding from his ear, and people walked past him. You see a 70 years old man bleeding from his ear, and you're all walking by. That was white people treating a white person that way. That wasn't even racism. It comes down to who you are as a human being. Yeah, and that's what we need to teach more.
Yes, completely. So important to reiterate that, and so important to talk about the next generation, that we're shaping that now, that we're going to change that now. I think another point, Masai, that you were just talking about that I want to pick up on is about women. And we've heard you say that when women win, we all win. And we know you're a huge supporter of providing women with equal work and life opportunities. If you could just tell us a little bit about when you made the decision to start to add girls and female campers to the Giants of Africa program. Talk to us about what you learned from that experience that might have been different prior to that.
Well, I told you I started selfishly trying to find basketball players for the NBA because this is my my job, you know. I had to earn a paycheck one way or the other. And when we started these basketball camps, we would have all these young boys and we would try to teach them the basic fundamentals and then the life skills. And the life skills became where honesty, your character, who you are as a person, respect for your elders, respect for women. And we kept preaching and talking, and I'd find myself always telling them, you know, you need to respect your mom, your sister, your girlfriend, your wife, everybody, you know, women you work with, you have to have that respect regardless of whether it's religion, whatever it is. I don't care what it is, you know, we are equal and you have to treat them equally and even better. And then it started to occur to me, Shelly, that, okay, you're telling these kids and you're hoping that they're going to go do it, you know, and then some of the strong women I work with, you know, started suggesting, and we started talking about having a women's camp, you know, and I started thinking about having a women's camp too. And then we started to have a women's camp. But when we were doing the women's camp, I didn't want to. There's always that suggestion of, oh, if we do the boys here, maybe we can have a little gym here and we'll just bring 20 girls or bring. And I said, from day one that I'm doing this camp, we're going to have the same amount of boys as the same amount of girls. They're going to get the same Nike shoes that the boys get. If we don't have equal gear for everybody, then I wouldn't do the camp at that place. I'd rather not do it. If it's not a matter of them playing in a big gym and then they're on the boys playing here and then the girls go play in another, we rotate them, you know, like, and then we started doing something incredible where they started playing together and doing some of the drills together. Yeah, the boys are stronger than the girls and you separate them to play their games, you know, like, but you finally get to see, and Myrah will talk about it a little bit, how they feel bigger, stronger. They feel that togetherness, you know, they feel that love, they feel that confidence, you know, that sometimes a woman needs, you know, a young girl needs at that time. And I'm so proud that they can use the sport to demonstrate, you know, some of these things that they can do so well, and it brings out their passion, you know. So this really became something to learn from for me, and then traveling all over the continent, whether it was to Somalia, to Samburu, all these places that we've gone to, you know, like trying to help more women through Giants of Africa, through sport, through basketball, using it as a tool. The joy it brings you, you know, I love listening to Myrah, listening to all these young girls, young women speak, grow, you know, and you find that you want to do more for the continent and for all over the world, because there are so many, so much opportunity, you know, that you can give, and there's so many young people that want opportunity.
That's fantastic to hear you talk about that. So great, the approach that you've taken. So Masai, on that positive note about how you've talked about the inclusion of girls and young women in your camps and the impacts of that, I'm going to let you actually introduce Mira right now. From like, how did you get to know Mira, and why is she so incredible for us to have here today?
Well, I tell you what, this young lady is going to need no introduction soon, and everybody will know who she is. She's one of the Giants of Africa campers, and one of her speeches at the camp blew us away. I think it was on the first day of camp, of how she talked about using sport, you know, like to become a diplomat, but not even a diplomat of her country, but a diplomat for Africa, to represent youth, to represent all ages as a leader. When she spoke in the camp stopped, okay? Stopped. And I would never, ever forget it in my life. And she's become such a big part of how we go forward with our camps, but the importance of teaching these kids that it is more than the sport, you know. Yeah, there is something bigger than the game, and she's gone on from being a camper to being a spokesperson, and now she continues her education in the UK. I'm so proud of her, and so proud that and very humbled, and we really appreciate you giving her the opportunity to be part of this. So Myrah, a warm welcome to you and to the symposium.
A perfect introduction. Thank you very much, Masai. Myrah, thank you for being here with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
I could not have done that justice that he just did with the introduction of you, and I'm grateful that you're here with us. So I'm going to start out with some questions for you, and you feel free to also add in things that I may not elaborate on enough from your perspective. So Myrah, you attended the Giants of Africa camp in 2019. And if you can think back to that time, what were some of the key takeaways and learnings that you took from being a part of that program?
Okay, so just to begin, I just want to say thank you for the introduction again. It was so humbling, and Masai always does this, and I always end up blushing, but thank you so much. So Giants of Africa, one of the main takeaways I got was make my mistakes with confidence. And that was through basketball, but I think it applies to anything you do in your life. Just do everything with confidence, and that's how you can power through any situation. Also, Giants of Africa reignited my passion. And it did this because the camp has so much freedom. It allows you to be who you are and talk about what you're passionate about beyond basketball. And it allows you to be your best self. They don't say you have to believe in this or you have to do this. It just gives you the freedom. And that's what I loved about it. It really allowed me to really talk about my passion for Africa. And then the last takeaway that I had, which was my favorite, was iron sharpens iron. I mean, I had the passion, yes, but because everybody around me was so driven and so motivated, and the coaches were very energetic, it sharpened who I was as a person. And I think the peers as well, like, I don't think people understand African youth have this energy and they have this mind that is just so, it's mind-blowing, honestly. And because I was in that atmosphere, I think it sharpened me as a person. I definitely wasn't the same as when I went, and then when I came out of it, it was a really changing experience.
That's amazing, wonderful. And we're hoping that you also help to shape, sharpen our iron, that we get better at what we are doing around the world by listening and engaging with young people like yourself. We know that you're now studying, you're undertaking an undergraduate program, and maybe just talk a little bit about how that transition to being in university and how you're adjusting to things right now with COVID.
Yeah, so the adjustment has been okay so far, but it's all about being open-minded. I mean, if I was to tell you about the things I've experienced here and the life back in Africa, it's extremely different, but open-minded, like I said. With COVID, we've obviously been restricted to online lectures and classes, but again, it gives me the freedom to, get books, extra books that I want to look at and sit down with. But a key adjustment, I think, is not forgetting that I'm part of now the African diaspora. And as part of the African diaspora, what I've realized is that actually I'm a representative, or I'm an ambassador by default. I can't deny that. So I'll have people saying, oh, where are you from? And I would usually just say Africa because I don't want to go into the details. But I've been pleasantly surprised, and people have been like, oh, but yeah, we're in Africa. And that is now a beautiful discussion, how I talk about Kenya, but also the places I've been to. And it also gives me an opportunity to redefine what the media has said about Africa, what other people have thought Africa was. So this whole opportunity right now is making me feel like almost a painter. I'm painting a new picture and a fresh picture for Africa. And it's really exciting because their faces just change. They're like, oh, wow, really? And I mean, I talk about Rwanda having 61% of their parliament being women. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. Or Senegal having $1 testing kits for COVID. Just all of these different things that are happening in Africa. I love to share that. And I love to be an ambassador and a representative.
Yes. Absolutely. That's so important. And I thank you for your positivity when you get approached with those questions, because it can be frustrating at times to hear the lack of knowledge that a lot of people have about the diversity in Africa, and about the empowerment, and about all of the brilliance and the cultural dynamics, some of the things that Masai talked about learning at an early age. There's so much we have to learn as well that we are forgetting, and that's causing us some division in our societies also. So I'm grateful to hear you talk about that. And if we think about the fact that 3/4 of the African population is below the age of 35 years, how can youth play a key role in shaping the future of Africa, but not just Africa, the rest of the world?
Definitely. I'm so glad you talked about the rest of the world, because we need to be global citizens at this day and age because of technology and how we're so interconnected. And for youth, I'd say because we are so many, there is strength in numbers, and that we need to unite and act as the voice of Africa, preaching the same thing. Division will only tarnish or reduce our image in the global atmosphere. And right now as youth, we can use our age to come together, and our passion to come together, and our energetic, our spirit to come together. So number one would be act as a voice, just a united voice. Obviously, as we grow older, or even now, we could start looking at economic contribution. I think the size of the working population is going to be enormous, and it's going to be full of entrepreneurs, fresh, brand new ideas. But if you also look at the size, then we also have a very exciting upcoming demographic dividend, where the youth are going to give back so much to Africa, and we need to start thinking about it now.
Yeah.
And lastly, I'd talk about the change of culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, why is it so easy that youth can change the culture in terms of music or fashion, but we can't change the culture of politics or economics? I mean, corruption and war is tainted on Africa. That's what people see. So we need to be able to change culture that is not on a shallow level of music or fashion, but now this could be our future of new politics, new economics.
That's a fantastic point for you to make. And I wanted to ask you, in terms of the vision of the Dallaire Institute, where we talk about a world where it becomes unthinkable for children to ever be recruited and used into armed conflict and violence. If you were a leader of a particular country or maybe a big global organization, what do you think you would stress as being the most important things that we should be focusing on to prevent children being used in this way?
Oh, okay, I definitely say education, educating the child themselves, which is why I love knowledge for prevention. It's perfect because I preach this and I live by this, and I say that we are usually educated on what to think and not how to think. Educated to just believe what we're told, but not educated enough to challenge it. And if we can educate the youth to make their own decisions, to come up with fresh ideas, then we will not just be restricting them on this is the lifestyle, this is what we believe, and now we can actually allow them to blossom. So I definitely say education is the foundation of everything that is yet to come, but it's also about how you execute that education. You don't want to just bombard them with different knowledge that they won't understand or where they won't progress.
Yeah, completely, because one of our challenges is young people are being educated in a formal sense, but they're also being educated through informal senses like social media. And in either case, a lot of times the ability for young people to think independently and critically is not there, right?
Exactly.
So Mira, if you do, dream big and think of the future and what you want to achieve, if I were to look back at this interview in 20 years time when I'm retired and old, and I say, wow, I got a chance to speak to her. What do you think in 20 years time, where will we see you? What will you be doing?
I'd love to say that I'd be president of Kenya. I would love to say that, but then also I like to look big, and like Masai said, a diplomat for Africa as a whole, so that's like working through the African Union, but definitely something to do with African leadership. I just want to be there. I want to be, still speaking, but also making changes economically, politically, socially. That's where I want to be in the future. And in terms of presidency, I mean, before I even run, I have 2 or 3 elections before me. So if any other women actually want to go ahead and beat me to that race, I'm opening the floor. I mean, I'm very competitive, but this race, I don't mind losing at all.
Well, that's wonderful. I had an opportunity to work with the first female president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, before she became president. And I asked her the question about what would be the first thing you will do. And she said, I'll turn on the lights. I'll make sure there's electricity for people. So if you have this opportunity to be the leader that you're talking about, whether it's an ambassador or the president, what message would you like us to put forward to other leaders right now about prioritizing the protection of children?
Well, simply put, age is not what makes the world go around, it's ideas. And to protect the youth, to protect the children, is to protect the ideas and protect the future.
I can't say it any better than that. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Mira. Thank you so much, Masai. It's been a tremendous pleasure for me to have this opportunity to speak to you. And I know for all of the participants who are online watching and people from around the globe that are here, it really is hugely impactful. So thank you for all you do, and we look forward to continuing our work with you as we move forward. I'm so excited for the future for both of you and for us collectively. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What we would now like to do, everyone, is we would like to next share a message that's been provided by Steve Kilalia, who is the founder of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Unfortunately, Steve is based in Australia and cannot join us online today. However, I'd like to offer a sincere thanks once again to the Institute for Economics and Peace for their ongoing support over the past year on our K4P project and currently. So we'll now turn it over to the video.
I'd like to welcome you to the symposium. From everything I hear, I think it's going to be an excellent affair, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy yourself very much. But I thought I'd give you just a little bit of background on the Institute for Economics and Peace, and especially positive peace. So the Institute for Economics and Peace is 15 years old now. It was set up to understand the intersection between business, peace and economics, placing special emphasis on metrics to measure peace, and then to be able to ascribe an economic value to any changes in peace. But I think the part of the work we've done, the Institute for Economics and Peace, which I really enjoy the most, is the work we've done on creating the architecture for positive peace. So positive peace is those attitudes, institutions and structures which create and sustain peaceful societies. And we arrived at that through statistical analysis against the Global Peace Index, and in fact we used about 25,000 different data sets, indexes and attitudinal surveys to do it, to understand the factors which are statistically most closely associated with highly peaceful societies, and we call that the positive peace framework. But what was remarkable when we developed this framework, what we found is that the same factors which create peace create a whole lot of other things which we think are important, such as higher per capita income, better performance on measures of well-being and happiness, better performance on ecological measures, and also better performance on measures of inclusion. So we then coined the phrase that positive peace creates the optimal environment for human potential to flourish. But I might just come back and just hit one more point just on the importance of measurement. So before the Global Peace Index, there was no measurement of global peacefulness. Now, if you can't measure something, can you truly understand it? And if you can't measure it, how do you know whether your actions are helping you or hindering you in achieving your goals? You actually don't. You really don't. But positive peace is a practical framework. It not only gives the ability to be able to look at a country or a government and be able to determine those macro indicators which need to be changed and the approaches you take, but it can also be done at a community level. And that is very, very important, because that now means you can take it and utilise it in many of the more troubled places around the world. And if we look at this now, that's really important, particularly for children. If we look at the next generation coming through, it's really important for them to get steeped in the knowledge of peace. And positive peace is a great way to do that. So what we can see is if you can actually improve the positive peace for children in conflict zones or very violent situations, they'll grow up with a better understanding of what non-violence is like. And that then has a virtuous effect, creates a virtuous cycle, which cycles through into further generations. Now, you're obviously going to learn how to implement positive peace in this symposium. And look, I'd encourage you all to study it well, take it away, and really bring it into the environments in which you live. Enjoy your symposium. Have fun.
Thank you very much. It's been an amazing morning. I have so many people to thank, but a special thanks again to all of our speakers who have joined us today. In particular, Minister Sajjan, to Special Representative Virginia Gamba, to General Dallaire, to Steve and IEP, to Masai and Mira from the Giants of Africa. Thank you for being such advocates for children's protection and their rights globally. I strongly believe that the example you set through your advocacy and your dedication to the issues at hand are paramount in changing norms around how we build sustainable and innovative approaches to better protect children and to create lasting peace. As my fellow speakers have outlined here today, children and youth are the cornerstones of our societies, and we must find meaningful ways to empower them to be positive agents of change. Now, more than ever, our collective efforts to prioritize the protection of children affected by armed conflict is essential. We invite you to join us for our daily panel series from 9 until 11 Eastern Time, kicking off tomorrow with a discussion on our children, peace, and security agenda, which will build off of the conversations here today and further unpack why children are core to international peace and security. And then on Wednesday, September 29th, we will host our Women, Peace and Security panel, which will reflect on the 20th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and consider the advances that have been made around the WPS agenda and the links to children, peace and security, and also how far we have still to come. On Thursday, October 1st, we will host a panel to focus on the importance of strengthening prevention approaches to ensure children are not recruited and used in conflict, and how prioritizing the protection of children is central to overall efforts to prevent conflict. And our final panel on Friday, October 2nd, aims to demonstrate the importance of early warning to the child protection and conflict prevention fields, while also considering best practices to effectively translate early warning into early action. Along with our 4 incredible speakers, an exciting aspect of this session will be a presentation on the Dallaire Institute's predictive model for the recruitment and use of children as soldiers globally, a first of its kind in the world. We ask you to please visit our website for a list of confirmed speakers for each of our panels. It is an impressive lineup of experts from a variety of fields and backgrounds, and with representation from all across the globe. Once again, I want to thank you for being here with us today. I'm inspired to be joined by so many champions for children. I look forward to our continued collaboration to build a world that prioritizes the protection of children. I would also like to take a few moments to thank some of our key donors who have joined us today that are with us, such as John Irving and Jim Stanford. Thank you for logging in and joining us today. I also wanted to thank the incredible staff at the Dallaire Institute. In particular, I'd like to give a huge thanks to Laura Cleve, who has been at the core of this particular initiative and this symposium, and to Dr. Catherine Bailey-Abedy, our Director of Research and Learning, for all of her guidance that she has been providing on this incredible research project. There are so many more that I could thank, but I in particular wanted to thank them. So to close this session, I would now like to introduce a video that we have put together at the Dallaire Institute for the K4P Symposium. This is aimed to provide a bit of a further context of the work that we do globally at the Institute. You will see some clips that depict our security sector training. We want to ensure you that the clips that you're seeing are conducted with adult actors and our key partners in Africa. Thank you very much for being here with us today, and we hope that you enjoy the video and continue to follow our work at the Dallaire Institute.
We see wars that are being sustained by the use of children, and I cannot accept as a professional soldier, let alone as a father, that such a scenario can continue and not be abated by concrete actions in the field.
At this moment in history, we are divided by many ideologies, approaches, and presumptions. Our world has been dominated by greed and individualism. We have been taught to perceive issues in binary terms without critically reflecting on the circumstances and the context that underlie our present global challenges.
Tonight, we are here to explore not only what makes children vulnerable to recruitment and use, but the rationale and the motivations that drive armed groups, forces, and gangs to use children. This means understanding the situation from all possible angles, from the child that is recruited and used as a soldier, to the person who is doing the recruiting, and to the communities that are impacted.
Now more than ever, we must reflect on the world we want to live for generations to come. To think about the one thing that should unite us in our quest for sustainable peace: children.
International law is also very clear that children who are recruited and used as soldiers are not to be held criminally responsible for their participation in armed conflict. This principle should apply regardless of where the child is recruited from or by which armed group, gang, or force, and no matter what your ethnicity, your race, your religion, your gender, or your political views one holds.
In its 10th year at Dalhousie University, the newly relaunched Dallaire Institute for Children, Peace and Security calls upon the international community to support a children's rights upfront approach to achieving global peace and security. A children's rights upfront approach sees the world through the perspective of children's needs and priorities. It recognizes that children's protection from violence and war must be our top priority in breaking cycles of generational violence.
The use of children in conflict significantly increases the probability that the conflict will recur in the future. It also impacts the severity and length of conflict, making it a generational problem.
We must consider early warning indicators and conditions that precede recruitment and use. And through this lens, we must focus on prevention.
We live in a time when war is complex. Conflicts transcend national boundaries. Globalization impacts greed and grievance. And competition for short attention spans appears to be more important than taking the time to delve deep and question perceptions versus the realities.
Youth is the leaders of tomorrow. So if we prepare today the leaders of tomorrow, it can save the nation of Somalia, the African nation, and the rest of the world.
All children deserve a life that is free from prejudice. Hate is a learned behavior, and violence is a taught trait. By prioritizing children's voices on the international peace and security agenda and within a broader peace-building initiative, we increase the likelihood of children growing up in an environment where they are active agents of positive change. And as we move forward, it is equally important for us all to remember that we have a collective role to play in protecting and uplifting society's most vulnerable, children.